If movies like Alice in Wonderland and Being John Malkovich have taught us anything, it's to stay away from tiny doors. On this episode of Moving Panels, we discuss Coraline.
Moving panels, tales collide. Strips and scenes where worlds divide. From print to screen, the legend stands. Comic capes with the upper hand.
Welcome to Moving Panels, the podcast where we discuss movies and TV shows that are based on, inspired by, and adapted from the world of comic books. I'm your host, Laramy Wells, and joining me today in the co-host chair is someone who's not just my daughter, but also a fearless adventurer who can tackle any challenge. Please welcome Ruby Wells.
Hello.
All right, so we are into the month of October, and we figured, you know what, let's do two kind of spooky episodes this month. So we're gonna do Werewolf by Night at the end of the month, but we're gonna kick off this month by doing Coraline. This is one that Ruby actually requested. We've done Stardust before. Bethany and I did Stardust, which is also based off a Neil Gaiman book, and I still count this because Coraline, although originally was written as a book, Neil Gaiman always puts a lot of illustration into it, and then it was fully adapted into a comic book, which we will discuss later.
Yeah.
But let's go ahead and get into the movie. The movie was released February 6, 2009, and it was directed by not Tim Burton, as a lot of people think. It was directed by Henry Selick, which is the same guy who also directed The Nightmare Before Christmas, another movie people think Tim Burton directed, James and the Giant Peach, and another comic book related movie, Monkey Bone.
That probably explains why James and the Giant Peach was on the Halloween section in Disney Plus.
Yep. Yeah, all of those kind of have that creepy feel with the stop motion animation and all.
Yeah.
So we actually, amazingly enough, here in 2024, we actually got to watch Coraline in theaters.
Yeah, it was like a Fathom or Fathom event.
Yeah.
I don't know how to say that word.
They re-released it, digitally remastered in 3D for its 15th anniversary. And so we went and saw it in theaters. Now, again, I know this is a 15-year-old movie, but we will do our best, as we always do here, to try not to spoil anything in the first half of this show. And then in the
first half.
Yes. And then in the second half of the show, we'll talk more in depth about the movie and the story. But let's go ahead and get into that comic book connection.
This is the comic book connection theme.
Based on Neil Gaiman's novella, Coraline connects to the comic world through Gaiman's influence as a renowned comic book writer, particularly known for The Sandman. The dark fantasy and surreal elements in Coraline mirror the tone of his comic works, and a graphic novel adaptation by P. Craig Russell was published in 2008, just a year before the movie. The eerie, alternate world of Coraline echoes themes often explored in horror and fantasy comics, solidifying its connection to the comic book landscape despite not being a direct comic adaptation.
Huh. Well, it's not a comic, it's a graphic novel, but...
Yeah. Well, again, graphic novel is really just a name given for like a contained story.
Yeah.
Which is what it is. A graphic novel is just a story in comic book form.
Yeah.
Still that art form. I do want to ask you, though, we know we talked about that we just saw it in theaters, but do you remember how long ago it was when you saw it for the first time?
No.
No?
I just remember watching it a lot at Papa and Gammy's.
Your grandparents?
Yeah. Watching it a lot with Jessie, my Aunt Jessie.
Yeah. Well, just to let everybody know this, when we went and saw it in theaters, that was my first time ever seeing it.
Mm-hmm. No, not when it first came out, but when we saw it a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, when we saw it in theaters for the 15th anniversary, that was my first time seeing it. It's not that I wasn't interested in it, I just had kept putting it on the back burner. Let's go through the cast here, and we'll talk about anybody we want to talk about. We'll start off with Caroline Jones, played by Dakota Fanning, right at the height of her stardom. Then Mel Jones, a.k.a.
That's the mother's first name.
That is what it said. Mel Jones, the other mother, or the real mother, voiced by Terry Hatcher, Lois Lane from television's Lois and Clark.
Cool.
Then Charlie Jones, father or the other father, played by John Hodgman, or here in the podcasting world, he is Judge John Hodgman.
What?
Yeah, he's got his own podcast. It's called Judge John Hodgman.
Okay.
Then we have the cat, voiced by the incredible, love always hearing his voice, Keith David. Then Wyborn, a.k.a. YB Lovat, voiced by Robert Bailey Jr., who was a complete creation for this movie.
I was gonna talk about that. Yeah, he's not in the book.
Nope. Not in Neil Gaiman's original book, not in the graphic novel. He was entirely created for the movie.
Yeah.
Then we
changes a lot of scenes.
It absolutely does, and we'll get into that. Then you got the neighbors, Miriam Forcible and April Spink, voiced by the legendary British duo of Dawn French and Jennifer Saunders. Anyone who follows British comedy might know Dawn French from the Vicar of, I forgot the name of the show. And then Jennifer Saunders, obviously from Absolutely Fabulous, but the two of them also even used to have their own like sketch comedy show. Legendary female comedic actors from Britain. And then finally we've got Bobinski, voiced by Ian McShane, who's really not that big of a character, at least in the graphic novel.
He really isn't in the book either.
Yeah, they make him he has a little bit more, I think, in the movie than he did there.
They make him just like a really creepy, like spooky kind of guy in the book, but he's like, they say that he's drunk in the movie.
Yeah, and then the graphic novel, he's just kind of more mysterious, and it like Coraline doesn't quite know what's going on, and he's not quite forthcoming about what he's doing in his apartment with the
circus mice.
Circus mice, yeah.
He's really outgoing with the whole circus mice thing in the movie, though. He's like, he's talking about what songs they're playing and what's going on. And
well, what did you think about all the voice actors? Did everybody seem to fit their part pretty well?
Yeah, I'd say so.
When you read the book, did you hear a deep voice coming from the cat like Keith David does in the movie?
Not really.
Nah.
Well, I mean, since I had already watched the movie, yes, but in my head I pictured it as it kind of be like a kind of like a soft and delicate voice, kind of like a regular cat.
Yeah, the way a regular cat speaks?
Yeah.
Because you listen to cats talk all the time?
Well, I mean, you know what I mean.
All right. Let's talk a little bit about, without giving away too much here. For those of you who don't know the story, this girl named Coraline, how old is she supposed to be?
I'm pretty sure she's supposed to be like 10 or 11.
Because the graphic novel, they draw her, she looks more like a teenager.
Yeah,
in the graphic novel.
In the movie, it's obvious that she's a little younger than a teenager.
Now, because I've only read the graphic novel.
Yeah.
And in the graphic novel, she looks like a normal teenage girl. She's got long blonde hair. But of course, iconically, because of the movie, there's the blue hair with the yellow trench coat or raincoat.
Even though she only wears that once in the movie.
How is she described as having blue hair in the novel?
She's described as having brown hair or black hair. Yeah.
Okay, so neither one of them gets her hair right then.
Nope.
Yeah.
Well, she was supposed to have black hair in the movie, but the animators made it have a blue tint to it.
Well, it comes out better when it's blue. Yeah. So, yeah, just curious about that. What did you think of the looks of the characters? Like, how did they compare to the way they're described in the book?
I'd say they looked... I mean, Mr. Bobinski, not even close, but...
Yeah. I found it kind of funny that in the movie they make, like, he's blue.
Yeah, that's so weird.
Yeah. It's always weird when it's like on Doug. I know you probably never watched Doug, but Doug's best friend was a guy named Skeeter, and he was blue. And it was just really random that there was this blue dude, and then there's another guy that was orange, and
Yeah.
But yeah, very very interesting that you just have this random
I'll
because
get
no
in-
one else is like a different color.
No.
Everyone else is a human color in the real world. Everyone is a human color
In the real world.
except for Bobinski. He's blue for some reason.
I'll get into the theories later.
All right. So, anything else you want to talk about before we start revealing a lot of stuff? What did you think about the addition of YB?
like
without
YB.
giving away too much.
I like YB.
You like the addition of YB?
I like him. He gives off the his grandma not wanting children.
Yeah.
to-
How depressing is it that his name is Y-born?
That's sad.
Yeah. His name is Y-born. Like they didn't want him. So
Yeah.
they named him Y-born. Like that's horrible.
And Coraline makes fun of it too. He says, she says, "Why were you born?"
Yeah. All right. So before we break into it, let's go ahead. For people who may or may not have ever read the book or seen the movie, the first thing I want to ask you is someone who hasn't seen it, should they watch it first or should they read it first?
I'd say read it first because I am a book person, and that's also Mama's rule.
Well, but so do you think that reading it first, do you think that makes the experience of watching it better?
I'd say so because I said to me personally that they sped it up, even though I watched the movie, that they sped it up in the book, even though they technically didn't.
Yeah. Yeah, and see, so you did though watch it first and then you read it.
Yes.
Whereas I read the graphic novel and then I saw it.
Yeah.
So I enjoyed the experience either way. I say, you know what, do what you want to do.
Yeah.
But I would say at least between the graphic novel and the movie, other than, of course, YB makes a big difference. But
Yes, definitely.
But in terms of the flow of the story, there are some subtle differences, but in the graphic novel and the movie kind of follow the same pace and all roughly about the same. So
Yeah.
So there you have it.
Now it's time for a commercial.
Life moves pretty fast. If you don't stop and listen to an 80s Flick Flashback podcast once in a while, you could miss it. Do you love movies of a certain age? Do you miss the days of VHS tapes, VCRs, and the video rental stores? Does the thought of another 80s movie being remade seem inconceivable? My name is Tim Williams. I'm the creator and host of the 80s Flick Flashback podcast. On each episode, I'm joined by guest co-hosts to discuss one of the many movies released in the 1980s. We share our first-time watch memories, our favorite scenes, and even learn some behind-the-scenes stories about the cast and crew along the way. New episodes are released every other Friday on your favorite podcasting platform. So make like a tree, get out of here, and go listen to an excellent episode of the 80s Flick Flashback podcast. The ad is over. Go home. Go.
All right, so let's take a trip around the spinner rack and talk about some stuff when it comes to the movie. And the first thing I want to talk is about your favorite speech bubble. So your favorite quote from the movie. I'll let you go first.
Okay, so I have two quotes.
Okay.
One is more of a serious one, and one is a funny one. Okay, how can you walk away from something and then come towards it? Walk around the world. Small world. And then I
So
had...
that conversation between Coraline and the cat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I almost fell down a well yesterday, Mom. Uh-huh. I would have died. That's nice.
Yeah. So that's part of that beginning to kind of show, at least in Coraline's mind, that her mom doesn't really pay her any attention.
Yeah.
And, is not really interested in anything, which is what causes Coraline to kind of have the experience that she does. My favorite quote actually came from Bobinski when he says, "The mice tell me things, but these things are not always true." I thought that was funny. All right, so let's look at a little what if scenario. So kind of like Marvel's What If. Let's talk about what if. All right, so let me ask you, Ruby, what would you do if you discovered a door to another world in your house like Coraline?
I'm gonna turn into the Watcher real quick. Duct tape it, chain it, move.
Let me ask you about the door. What were your thoughts? Because you also read the graphic novel. We didn't mention that earlier.
Yeah.
So you've read the novella, you read the graphic novel, you've seen the movie.
Mm-hmm.
So in the graphic novel, it is a full-size door.
I hate that.
Okay.
I actually hate that because it's a small door in the book.
What do you think makes it such a... What's the importance of it being a small door?
That it's out of the ordinary. It's obvious that it wasn't connected to the other apartment when it used to be a full-on house. So that's what made me upset that it was a full-on door in the graphic novel.
Yeah, the graphic novel actually does really just play off the fact that it's a door that was supposed to go to this empty apartment. Because in the graphic novel, she actually goes outside and she realizes there is a room there. So she thinks that will go to it. And then when her mom uses the key, the skeleton key, to open it, it's just bricked off.
It's not a skeleton key, it's a button key.
Well, but I mean, it's typically a key to open just about anything, is what it looks like, your typical skeleton key.
Yeah.
So it's a full-size door in the graphic novel, and it's a tiny door, a la Being John Malkovich, which I know you don't know what that is, but anyone listening might. So, all right, let me ask you another question. So, what if you could change something about the story? Anything? What would you change?
I would want more background on the whole YB disappearing, the other YB disappearing thing.
Okay.
I want more background on that.
So the other YB, which is in the other world, the fact that he turns into like sand, dust, whatever it is. But he's not the only one. Like the
dad starts turning into a pumpkin.
Yes, but when Coraline kills the wasps that are taking away the stone.
That's not the same thing, because those are made from like doll things. You know how the
yeah, but everything in the other world is created by the other mother.
Yeah, but
or
still.
What is it that she's called? Because
Beldam.
Yeah, I originally read it as Bedlam.
Beldam.
Which makes sense.
Beldam.
But yeah, then I found out she's called the Beldam, which I didn't understand like what the meaning.
That's a demon. That's what a demon is.
Because that's the other thing, is what exactly is she supposed to be? Because the movie kind of portrays her as this like spider-like character.
Yeah.
Whereas
is technically a demon.
Well, I'm thinking more of like a, interdimensional creature, almost like an alien. And then the comic book just kind of had her get kind of just deformed looking. They didn't really go the spider route in the graphic novel.
In the graphic novel, she looks creepy from the beginning.
Yeah. This is true. How did they describe when she becomes the monster at the end? How do they describe that in the...
It's been a while since I read it, but they describe it as like she started just growing and her skin started shrinking. You know what I mean? Like she started getting skinnier.
Yeah, I agree with you though. Like if I could change something, I would want some more of the beginning. Like I want more of knowing what Coraline's life in the real world was like. Just a little bit more of that. Yeah, for a little bit more background, but my background's different. Mm-hmm. I will say that like I said, it runs the same pace as the graphic novel, because in the graphic novel, Coraline almost immediately discovers the door.
Uh-huh.
Like it's on like maybe page 3. Like she just almost immediately discovers the door. So I didn't quite like that. It just, I know a lot of people would just want to get things going, but I think because of the story that this movie's trying to tell, you want that contrast. Like, what is her real life like compared to this other world?
I like how it does it in the movie. Like, it shows how she thinks her mom doesn't care about her.
Yeah.
And her dad's always really
He's
busy,
just always busy.
but he's still nice to her.
Yeah. Yeah. Because very, very much, again, that Alice in Wonderland type connection, that Wonderland is kind of a way for Alice to escape from the real world where her mother is forcing her to do things she doesn't want to do and all that. And so, all right, let's move on. I decided to title this Challengers of the Unknown, which is a very unknown comic book in DC. But
I don't know what that is.
you should, because they're
in
Teen Titans Go to the Movies. Yeah.
And I still don't know what they are.
Like I said, they're lesser known. But my question that goes along with that is, what part of the other world did you find the creepiest?
Well, until we just watched it, my first response was when the Miss Spink and Miss Forcible are trying to get back the
When they're in
soul,
like the bubble,
the like candy thing,
or whatever
the
it's
candy
supposed
wrapper. But I changed my answer because we watched it again. When the other mother's trying to get through the door.
Yeah.
And like it's like the "don't leave me.
Yeah.
I'll die without you."
No, so Miss Forcible and Miss Spinks, when Coraline goes on her scavenger hunt, adventure, whatever you want to call it, in the other world to escape, and she's got to find now they call them eyes.
Technically just souls.
Yeah, they call them eyes in the movie, but they're just different various like toy balls.
Yeah.
That contain a soul. In the graphic novel, they were just like little marbles. All three of them looked exactly the same.
Yeah, same with the book. I like how they look different in the movie.
Yeah, and she finds them by looking through a rock that has a hole in it, which she is given by Forcible and Sphinx.
In the real world.
In the real world, yes.
And they
somehow make it out of the tea leaves.
No.
The candy. The candy, sorry. They somehow make it out of candy. Is that what they do in the book?
Uh-huh.
Okay, so the graphic novel was different, because in the graphic novel, she just finds it. Like, it's just a rock she finds.
Yeah, they make it in the book.
But yeah, so when she's in the other world and she's having to find these souls, there's one inside of this candy wrapper with a twisted up Miss Other Forcible and Other Spinks. And yeah, when she gets it, they attack her very briefly.
Yeah, the attacks are very brief.
Yeah.
They don't want to make this a PG-13 movie.
Well, in the graphic novel, they're also very brief.
Yeah.
So
they're very brief fights.
Yeah. Is it the same in the novel? Like,
yeah.
Yeah. They're not even really fights. Like, they come for her, she backs away, and they end up
just giving it to her.
Or like in the case of the other father, he falls into the little river, creek, whatever it is,
and gives it to
her. And he hands it over as he's falling. So I will say that scene is kind of very creepy, not only because of the Other Forcible and Other Spinks, but the dog bats.
Yeah, that's not even the creepiest part of that scene, though.
Yeah.
It's them just yelling, "Thief, take it back."
Yeah. But I do agree with you. Like and it was very cool to see it in 3D, but when Coraline is escaping through the tunnel and she's locked the door on the other side, as the other mother is pounding on it, the shot they did of where that door is getting closer and closer to Coraline, as if the tunnel is kind of collapsing.
Yeah.
And then she has to shut it right before it gets to her. Yeah, that's a pretty kind of a nerve-wracking moment for that. But so I will agree with that one. So let's talk a little bit more about the comparison between the novel, the graphic novel, the movie. So the movie, which is of course done with stop motion animation, which was also, Nightmare Before Christmas, James and the Giant Peach also do. how does that style, the look of the movie, how did that contribute to the overall atmosphere, and how did the stop motion kind of, you think, affect the story?
It makes me personally, it makes it creepier and gives it a more realistic look, yet a more cartoonish look at the same time, if you try to, if you understand what I'm trying to say.
I understand, because if they did it like live action, it would probably be a little scarier.
Definitely.
Yeah, because of the either practical effects or the makeup they would have to put on, like the other mother and all of the others. Probably, yeah. Whereas when you do it,
picturing that.
Whereas when you do it in this stop motion, you still can have that almost realistic feel, but yet with a cartoonish quality to it. I do agree. I mean, and I would say even the way that the other world, at least in the movie, the other world is a lot brighter than the real world. There's a lot more vibrant colors.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. That's what I also put. In the real world, it's really dull and bland, while in the
darker,
other world,
muted tones,
it's really colorful and bright.
Yeah, I mean, even when the other mother turns into like the spider thing, and the room turns into a spider web, like even though most of that scene is black and white, it's a very vibrant black and white. So yeah, it is funny, and then of course, the tunnel, when she first goes into it, is very colorful. And then when she's having to escape,
it's really dull and covered in spider webs.
Yeah. And children's stuff to indicate the other children that she is trapped. Which is the thing, when you start actually thinking about, like, I know we meet these 3 ghosts.
Yeah.
But based off of that tunnel, you would think there's been a few others.
Uh-huh.
So... don't know. There's definitely been more than the 3.
And they didn't make it.
Yeah. So, and again, the stop motion's great. Makes it, I think it also helps with the creepiness.
Yeah.
Because there is something you don't have when,
like, the cat claws off her eye or her buttons. Yeah.
And I just think the stop motion, because you could do this with an animation, like a computer animation, but it doesn't give that really believability that I do think, again, because the stop motion, we are literally looking at dolls performing this, and some people might say puppets, but they're not puppets. They're just dolls. They're just standing there, and they change movement and facial expressions.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool. All right, let's get into the next question. How does Coraline's character development in the movie compared to the novel? So is it the same? Are there any changes? What changes are there?
I mean, it's pretty similar, but I mean, she has more internal thoughts in the book, of course, because in movies can't really do that.
Yeah. Well, it's a lot harder. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And to movies like that, that's kind of hard to do internal thoughts. Because you hear her go like, I know they're in the snow globe, but if I tell her that they're in the door, that she's gonna open it and I can be free.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the movie goes a little bit more external. It's more about the way Coraline acts. It's her social interaction. The way, like we've talked about, the way she interacts with her mom and thinks that her mom's always against her and all that. Because I do think that we are being told this story from Caroline's point of... Or Coraline. I did it just like in the movie.
Yeah.
Or in the book. That I think we're getting this story from Coraline's point of view. Like, I think the interaction we have with the mom is the way Coraline sees it. It's not necessarily the way it's happening.
Yeah.
And so I do think the movie is a lot more about her interactions and kind of making it more of her understanding a little bit better the way that people speak with her and interact with her. And I honestly think the character of YB kind of plays with that, because
Yeah.
the fact that the other YB doesn't speak,
Yeah.
she's able to see more of his kind of the YB character's true intentions, even
Yeah.
through the other version of him, that he does want to help. You know, he is trying to be a friend, whereas in the real world, she just thinks he's annoying and obnoxious and
Yeah.
and all that. Because again, I think we're seeing it from her point of view. So once everything, she's free and everything is back, her parents are back, and YB shows up at the door and all that, we now all of a sudden see things differently. You know, her mom seems more caring and loving. You know, she buys her those gloves, and you know, her dad's seems to be more, you know, involved and all that, which you would think they're not aware that any of this happened. So they don't realize that, again, they don't realize all of this has happened like Coraline does. And so the fact that they didn't change, it was Coraline that changed. Whereas in the novel, or the graphic novel in my case, I think it's more internal, because like you said, you get more of her thoughts and more of
Yeah.
her feelings. And I think it's more about her kind of, you know, this is really kind of a coming of age story.
Yeah.
It's her learning how to grow up. It's learning how to be more brave. It's really her dealing with what she is experiencing, not just looking at it, you know, not looking at it as in just a
Dull.
yeah, but kind of looking past. I'm trying to think of the words I'm wanting to use here, but you know, looking past just what's right in front of her and realizing there's more to it. I think that's what the book is getting more across. Do you have something to say about the YB?
Yeah. Is it okay if I get into like theories?
Sure, we can go ahead and do that.
Okay. So, well, it wasn't about YB. It was about the whole like glove thing. About the mother giving her the gloves. There is a theory that Coraline never leaves the other world.
Yeah.
There's a theory that because the mom said like a definite no on the gloves, and Coraline says, "Oh, well, my other mother would give it to me. Well, then you can just ask her to buy all your clothes."
Yeah, but again, I think that goes to what I was just saying about how in the first half, before she goes into the other world, we're seeing the world from her perspective. So I don't think her mom was as blunt as it actually, you know, plays out. I think that's the way Coraline sees it. I think the mom's going, "No, we can't get that right now. We've got to get stuff for school." You know, I think it's more of the mom trying to make her understand, but all Coraline hears is no.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying?
Okay, yeah.
And so then at the end, when her mom does surprise her with the gloves, clearly that shows her mom does want her to be happy. Her mom is trying, you know, is a loving mother.
Now that you say that, as I'm thinking about it, after all that trauma from the other world, she's probably like more appreciative of her parents.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, is that she learned something through her experience. Because again, her real mother doesn't remember any of that happening.
Mm-mm.
So she wouldn't have changed. The real mother would not have changed. So the fact that when she returns, you know, the real mother and
like
father comes in and they're so happy to see Coraline and just like, you know, so surprised that she's shocked to see them. And then, yeah, she has the gloves for her. Like, I think that's Coraline finally seeing. I also think that plays a part in what we talked about with the style of the movie, where at the beginning, the real world is very drab, very, you know, muted tones. And then when we get to the end, I think the color brightens up a little bit. And I think the first sign of that is those gloves, because those gloves are multicolored.
Yeah, now that you say that, yeah.
And as the ending plays out, we see more and more color until eventually we're out in the garden where there is just every color imaginable.
Yeah.
So I think it's symbolizing.
When they're like planting the tulips.
Yeah, I think it's symbolizing Coraline growing in her understanding of what she's experiencing.
It does seem more colorful after she's gone through all that stuff. And what I notice is that when she comes to the real world and her parents aren't there, her mom's groceries are all rotten and expired. That really shows like how long she's been gone and how long they've disappeared.
I will say, and we can talk about this maybe a little bit, I will say I think that's a plot hole though, because when she comes back, the first time she's able to escape, and she comes back and she finds that her parents are missing, the groceries, that would mean several days have passed. But then at the end, when she fully escapes, it's like it's only been, a few hours maybe. Because with Wybie coming over and saying, hey, that doll I just gave you, like, I need it back.
Hold up.
And her parents acting like they just ran to town and have just come back. So I kind of had a problem with the way that timeline kind of plays out. It didn't make sense that the food was that rotten, and then for her to then come back, and it's almost like no time has passed at all.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
Well, let me ask you another question. Let's get into it. So, what are some of your most memorable scenes or scenes that you just thought were very impactful to the movie, to the story? And again, how did they compare to the book versions of them?
I'm not going to get this quote correct, but it's just how I remembered it. In the spiderweb scene, it matches the book. In the book, it says like, again, I'm not going to get this entirely correct. The floor underneath me disappeared into a giant web.
So is that was you thought a very memorable?
Yeah, I've always remembered that part, no matter how many times I try to forget it.
So do you think it plays out? Do you think it plays out in the movie the way it plays out in the book?
Yeah, because like the floor underneath her starts disappearing, and then it's just this giant spider web.
Yeah, which I don't think, if I'm remembering, that doesn't happen in the graphic novel. I think they omitted that part out of the graphic novel. I think it just goes straight into her escaping, and then the other mother trying to come through the door, and they're closing it on her hand. That was, for me, I will say, the hand part. In the graphic novel, that is an intense 2 pages of the hand, because you just see the hand like in the background, like hiding behind a tree, or it's the hand's like stalking her.
Yeah.
Whereas I think in the movie they kind of just go very quickly into, here's the hand's attacking, we stop the hand.
But like Thing in the little pictures, he's just hiding, just stalking people.
I think I mean, again, I think the hand scene is very impactful moment, kind of as a finale, where it's not quite over just yet, and she's got to finally put the final nail in the coffin, per se. Yeah. Now, are there any scenes that you think that they toned down that maybe in the movie weren't as scary as they were in the book? Because for me, again, that's that hand scene. I think the hand scene is scarier in the graphic novel than it was in the movie.
Yeah, it's not as important, but in the book, Miss Forcible and Miss Peaks in the other world, their play goes on forever. It never stops.
Yeah.
It never stops. It's never ending.
Yeah, in the graphic novel, that plays out a lot more vivid as well. And then with the entire audience filled with dogs.
Yeah. And they're allowed to eat chocolate.
Yeah. I also think the other father is toned down. At least, again, I only read the graphic novel, But I think in the
Gosh, the other father in the book is terrifying.
and I also think he serves more of he is just a puppet of the other mother. Because in the graphic novel, she actually discovers the other father as he is, I guess, dying.
Yeah.
In the basement, and he's almost like just made of dirt.
And he like comes after her.
Yeah, he comes after her, and she avoids him, and he crashes into things, and he starts falling apart. And that's essentially what undoes the other father. Whereas in the movie, it's almost like he is a connection of the real father.
And like he's going like, I don't want to hurt you.
Yeah.
I don't want to hurt you.
He says she's making me do this, and then of course, as he falls into the river, he pulls the ball.
Breaks the hand thing and pulls the soul and gives it to her.
The ball that contains the soul. He lifts it up and hands it to her as he's going under. So I think they toned that down a little bit. Didn't make him as scary as he is.
Yeah, I mean, he's still kind of
novel.
Scary because his hair turned into vines and
leaves. when she pulls the like vine out of his ear, that's was nasty.
Scary.
All right, let's finish this up. What way does the film's ending differ from the books, and what do you think those differences signify for Coraline's character and the story's resolution? So I've technically already said my thoughts on this. I think the movie is showing more of the way she's experiencing life. Now, let me ask you this: in the graphic novel, she dreams about the 3 other kids. Is that in the actual novel?
She just dreams about it.
Yeah. And they pretty much make it imply that every time she goes to sleep, that's what happens.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on the comparison between the endings?
Well, I said like YB's not in the book. So the whole ending where like they throw the hand down the well, the broken pieces of the hand down the well. That's YB's not in that part.
No, Coraline does it all, lays the trap, and does everything herself.
Pretty sure, like, the cat's with her. I'm not certain, though.
Yeah, I can't remember either if the cat helps at that last part. So what'd you think of, again, the inclusion of YB and YB pretty much coming to the rescue at the end? Do you think that also helps with her understanding of, again, the world she's experiencing, that YB's not just this weird kid, that he's actually a friend, and he's the fact that he believed her? And
well, at first he thought she was crazy.
Yes, but again, he stayed true to their friendship. Let me also ask you this about because again, the graphic novel essentially she ends with her going to sleep.
Yeah.
She goes to sleep. She's at this like picnic with the other kids, and they kind of become friends in the dream world. And that's it. That's the end. Is that the way the book ends?
Uh-huh.
So what do you think that comparison to the movie where they're having this big garden party, and it essentially gives it a very happy ending?
I like the garden party better because in the book it's like, oh, but your story's not over yet.
Yeah, that's the thing about, because even in the graphic novel, we don't really know how her life has changed when she comes out. We know that she internally has become more brave and, grown up a little bit internally, but we don't know how her actual life has changed.
I like that ending better in the movie.
You like the movie's ending better?
Yeah. I like how the whole garden party plays out. And is it okay if I throw in another theory real quick?
Go right ahead.
Okay. So there's a theory that the grandmother of YB, she sold that apartment to Coraline's family because they had Coraline.
So it's like but didn't they say that she doesn't want children living there?
Exactly, because she's trying to protect YB.
Okay.
Because that's why she was so surprised to see Coraline during the garden party.
Yeah.
She was like, oh, Coraline's.
Because it's not revealed in the movie, but in the graphic novel, it's revealed that one of those 3 kids is like her sister.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Which, again, I think that the movie needed a little bit more of that backstory.
Yeah.
Needed a little bit more of that connection. Especially the fact that in the movie, you actually get to see the grandmother at the end, whereas you don't see her at all in the graphic novel.
Nope.
So, in fact, there's not even a mention of a grandmother or anything. It's just
Owner.
Yeah. They've bought this, or not bought the house, but they've bought this apartment inside of this big house where they live at a portion of it, and then
Mr. Bobinski
lives in like the attic area of it, and then the 2
Miss
ladies,
Spink and Miss Forcible, live in
the basement area. Yeah.
And then there's the unowned one.
Yeah, the random other room that we never find out anything about.
Yeah, and she in the book she's thinking to herself, like, how do you even get into the other apartment?
So let me ask you the thought of, at the very end of the movie, we see the cat sitting on the sign, and then he walks behind the post and appears to disappear. Like, what were your thoughts on that? Is that to show that he's maybe something other than a cat?
I mean, he does it in the movie. Like, he goes inside a tree and comes out a different end of the tree.
Yeah.
And, like, he walks behind the branch and just disappears.
But go back to my question. Do you think he's something other than a cat?
I mean, yeah, because cats don't do that. And he said he's not the other anything.
Yeah, there's not an other version of him that he... So, yeah, part of me almost wonders, like, you go into the demon thing, that, like, could the cat be, like, a guardian angel? Like,
huh.
Could that be the
I never
case?
thought of that. That might be true.
You know, he's a protector of the children and tries to do his best to protect them, and maybe the other children didn't listen to him the way Coraline did. And so... Yeah, could be. All right, well, let's go ahead and get into it. Final decision, bag it, stack it, or trade it. So, Ruby, what say you?
I'd say bag it.
Okay.
I've been watching this movie my entire life. It's a really good movie, me personally. I think it's a really good movie. There have been sayings that it wasn't good enough of a movie because it was too scary for little kids, but not scary enough for teens and adults.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's for reasons like that. I kind of place it as a stack it because, yeah, I don't quite know who this movie's for. It does fall under that same kind of area that, like, Nightmare Before Christmas falls, where older people will enjoy it, but I don't think they really will have the watchability. And then if you're too young, you might find it too creepy to want to watch it over and over again. So there's
Not
really...
me.
That's what I'm saying. There's this really, like, small window of viewers that you would have that would really find this a fun movie. I'm also, I admit, I'm not a huge fan of the stop motion movies. I'll admit I'm not a huge fan of Nightmare Before Christmas. I've never really liked James and the Giant Peach. So,
I haven't watched it.
yeah, so that might play a factor in that, but I'm going to give it a stack it. So let's give some recommendations. So if someone does in fact enjoy Coraline, like we both did, you gave it a bag it, I gave it a stack it. So let's give some recommendations. Like, what else could they either read or watch that would give them kind of the same experience that they had with Coraline?
I have no idea.
Well, your mom gave you one, so...
I don't know what that movie is.
What did she say?
Watcher in the Woods.
Yeah, so Ruby's mom, my wife, Bethany, gave her the recommendation of Watcher in the Woods, which is an old Disney movie that essentially is a horror movie made for kids. So you kind of have that same kind of creepy experience going on. Yeah, I mean, that's a good one. I think that one might actually be a little too scary for younger viewers, but it definitely is a good one. One of my recommendations also, I think, is probably is most definitely too dark for younger viewers, and that's Lock and Key by Joe Hill and Gabriel Rodriguez. There is the graphic novel or novels. There's 6 volumes, I believe. And then they also turned it into a Netflix series. But it is much darker, but it is a very similar story. It's about these 3 kids, 2 brothers and a sister. Their mom is also eventually becomes a part of it. And they deal with some very eerie kind of magical elements that are centered around an old house. And instead of it just being a magical door, it's not just a door, it's these magical keys. And each key they find does something different. And
I mean, kind of like the button key.
Yeah. But yeah. Which
like
is the same
magical.
idea. Yeah, it's the same idea that each key, does its own thing. And I say both of them deal with themes of bravery, of confronting your darkest nightmares, discovering your inner strength. So I think it's a very good comparison, but I would say that Lock and Key is maybe for a little bit older of an audience. So something a bit more kid-friendly. The only thing I could think of, there's a graphic novel, there's a series of comics called Bone by Jeff Smith. It's a little bit more, humorous, more cartoonish, but it does combine that humor with the lightheartedness. I'll get the word out. But does actually not attack, but deals with some more serious themes. But again, does it with a much cartoonish and filled with a lot more comedy and humor into it. But for those of you not familiar, Bone is about 3 cousins who are from Boneville. They are essentially supposed to be like anamorphic bones. And they go on quests. They come across magical creatures like a dragon. They meet humans. They're attacked by what Princess Bride would call rodents of unusual sizes. So you got all that, big battle between good and evil. So it's a fun kind of, a mythos, kind of a different world to go into, but it kind of flips it a little bit. It's about a mythical creature, this bone character, Phone Bone is what his name is. It's about him going into a world, not a human going into a different world. It's just one magical creature, in essence, going into another magical world. So, All right, so we'll wrap this up here. Thank you, Ruby, for joining me on that, and finally getting to talk about a movie that you really have a lot of passion for. So I'm glad you got to talk about it. All right, thanks everybody for listening. Rate and review the show. But as always, for today, for Moving Panels, I'm Laramy Wells, and I'll see you on the other side of the page.
Bye.